Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Bryan, host of the Plant Podcast. The Plant is brought to you by ThinManager Software, the global leader in thin client management and mobility solutions. ThinManager is a Rockwell automation technology. In this episode of The Plant, I had a chance to talk with Paul Burns, training and technical services lead for ThinManager. We took a look at what the history of ThinManager has been and all that we do to help get integrators, partners, and customers trained on using ThinManager. Hello and welcome to The Plant. I'm your host, Bryan, and joining me today is Paul Burns from Rockwell Automation. Today we are going to talk about ThinManager training. ThinManager has always put a priority on delivering training in the US and internationally to get people up and running with ThinManager. Our training department has traveled thousands of miles around North America to give integrator partners the knowledge needed to successfully deploy ThinManager to their customers. We offer a variety of online learning opportunities and even the ability to get ThinManager certified. Paul, thanks so much for joining me today. Paul has been with ThinManager since its first release and runs the show when it comes to training on the product. Paul, give us a little history about you and the ThinManager product.
We started off as system integrators. I've been with the company for almost 20 years, and we were in a food and beverage company that had, I think, 386 PCs. And this was back in the days of Windows 95, where you had to update every week. Patch Tuesday was a real thing. And so what we would end up doing is waiting until quarterly plant-wide shutdowns, and then we would have to update all 386 PCs, and they took multiple reboots because we were doing 6 weeks, 12 weeks worth of patches, and it was a real pain.
That sounds like a real pain.
The other thing is, if you're doing an HMI, if you change one button, like maybe change a SQL query, you have to roll it out 386 times. Well, the owners of the company had seen what was then called terminal services, now called remote desktop services, which was essentially a mainframe architecture for Windows. And the idea was that if we could have a few servers that we would maintain and update and have the workstations connect to the server, then it would centralize the support. And that's where ThinManager came in. The big point that made the difference with ThinManager is a difference between us and Microsoft's vision. Microsoft assumed that you would have an NT40 server that you would run your sessions on, but they assumed that the client would be either a Windows 3.11 or Windows 95 workstation. And that didn't gain you anything because you still had all of the hard drives of the PCs that needed care and feeding, and you had the addition of the server farm to run your sessions. And so the owners and lead developers of the company who were working on this project realized that the only way to make it valuable was to have a device that had no moving parts, no care and feeding, and essentially have toasters out there that could connect to the servers and run. And then that became a huge benefit. Even if it took a dozen servers or 20 servers in a plant that big, we went from having 386 hard drives to having the dozen servers, and then out there in the production areas would be devices that had no moving parts that could be centrally managed. And that was the foundation of ThinManager. And as it turns out, it was a brilliant analysis of the situation and a brilliant way to deploy it. And so everything that has been done with ThinManager has been centralized management and control to devices that have no moving parts, no upgradable operating system, no embedded operating system, no flashed operating system that requires additional care and feeding.
Yeah, that's been really the draw from the start, is just push it out, low maintenance, much easier to handle. What do we say, 2 minute thin client replacement?
Yeah, if that. We used to do advertising things where we'd have one of the owner's kids come in and they're like 5 years old and they would replace thin clients. We also took a thin client, put it out in the parking lot, had it hooked up to a monitor, and we drove over it with a pickup truck and it's still working. So, it's pretty reliable. And to be honest with you, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I'd want to work at a factory being a ThinManager manager and just take care of everything with ThinManager, because it'd actually be pretty easy and powerful.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, so the main reason I had you on, is to talk about training and how we get people up and running with ThinManager, whether it be a system integrator or, an end user. To start, let's talk about a system integrator. Say you have one that's new to ThinManager, has a customer wanting to deploy in their factory or production space. Walk our listeners through the different ways someone can get familiar with ThinManager that doesn't already know it.
Okay. We have probably an overload of information available. If you go to our website, thinmanager.com, the first thing that you're going to see is a header bar, and there will be a tab called support. And if you go into the support, there is manuals, and we have two different manuals. We have the user guide, which is a 700-page manual, every button, every checkbox. I kind of look at it as like the lawyer ease. It has good information and, is very valuable. But
Yeah, light reading too.
I'm sorry?
I said light reading too with 700.
Yeah, it's only 700 pages. It's good for nap time. But we have ThinManual, which is kind of a Cliff Note version of ThinManager. It just covers the essentials, topic by topic, 4 or 5 bullet points that'll bite you if you aren't paying attention. And so it covers setting up the Microsoft server, setting up the user accounts, installing applications, licensing ThinManager, deploying applications, user accounts, relevance, mobility, all of that type stuff. And to me, that's one of the first places that I'd go. It's sweet and easy and to the point. It's my favorite piece of documentation that we have. The other thing I have to throw in, that if you're in ThinManager, if you hit F1, it will pull up a contact sensitive help to tell you about that page.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, try as you go. You can kind of click that F1 and see where you might be going wrong, if you're going wrong somewhere.
Right. And I find myself using it more than I would like to admit, because I'll forget what his setting is. And I'll go, what is that setting? And I'll hit F1, it'll pull up. I go, oh yeah, now I remember. And so there's good information there. So the manuals are really good. Underneath support, we also have a section called the knowledge base. And this has technical articles, relatively short ones. Try to get them to the point on, building a server, what fingerprint readers we use, what card readers. If you get an error when you're installing it and it says that you don't have the Visual C++, where to go and update that through Microsoft so that the application will run. The difference between Pixie Boot and regular boot. Very good articles. We try to keep it updated, add things as we go. Good information there. The other thing that we have on the web page is we have videos. And you can get that through support again. In the third column, it says video training course. And if you go there, you can register it, and then there'll be a bunch of different training videos that tell you, how you set up a server, how you do this, how you do that. There's a bunch of different videos to let you see, because let's face it, we live in a YouTube generation. A lot of people don't want to read. They just want to watch a 5-minute, 15-minute video and learn from there. And so
Yeah.
this video learning is a nice thing about that.
Yeah, I think for those who learn visually, and the video learning is kind of cool because it almost takes you through individual features that you can deploy into production as well.
Right. I think that there's one on, say, multi-monitor that goes through and shows you multi-monitor, and that way you can get a specific one, or the new virtual screens, which allow you to take a desktop and carve it up however you want and deploy your applications in whatever section of the desktop that you want. There'll be one on that, so you can watch visual screens and you go, wow, that'd be cool. That would help me, and I could do this with it.
Yeah.
So I've covered manuals, I've covered the knowledge base, I've covered the videos. The other thing that I think that I would mention, and this is especially because you said system integrators, we have a certification program, which is under, I believe, training. Which is, if you go to support, there's a training link, and there's an on-demand certification. Now, this is more testing than teaching, but what it does is it's a series. You sign up for it. It's complimentary. It is designed for system integrators, but a distributor, a channel partner, a customer, a ThinManager specialist at a customer site can take this on-demand certification. And the basic premise is that we have an imaginary, sample factory that you deploy ThinManager to. And there are 5 labs. The first one is your basic, setting up 2 production lines with an HMI, setting up some people in the office, setting up the boiler room, setting up a shipping department with a few, 2 office servers and 2 production servers. And what you do is you install ThinManager, get a demo code to activate the resources. You follow through the lab, which is, 5 pages, 10 pages, and create this configuration. Then you back up your configuration and submit it. Then you do the second lab, which covers multi-monitor. You set up a control room that has 2 dual monitors and 2 quad monitors. Then the third lab is using virtual screens, WinTMC, cameras, a few other kind of advanced options. And then when you're done, you back up your configuration and submit it. The fourth lab covers relevance user services, where you can grant or deny access to applications based on your membership of a group. And I really like that a lot, because you can put applications out there and hide them from the operator and limit it to maintenance workers or foremen or quality control. And then the final lab is using the relevance user location services, where you deploy a third production line, but instead of deploying thin clients out there, an enclosure with a thin client and a monitor and cabling, electricity, etc., you deploy your applications to locations using QR codes, and you use a tablet to be your station. So you could walk up. The first 2 production lines have 4 stations. Well, the third production lines has 4 stations, but instead of a actual terminal there, they just have a QR code. And so the theory would be that you could take your an iPad or Android or Surface tablet, walk up, scan that QR code, and have the HMI delivered to your tablet. And so that becomes your user interface. Now, these are not live systems. It's all, theoretical done in configuration, but that gives you the ability to, like, if you're traveling on the road, you can install it on your laptop, do it in the hotel, for an hour every night. And in a, 3 or 4 day travel on the road, you'll have them all completed. And then you'll get a certification that you're trained, you've proven that you've able to do ThinManager. And if you're an integrator, it makes you a member of our integration partnership. Your integration firm gets posted on our website as a certified integrator, so that if somebody wants to, have a project done, they can go and search our database and find integrators in their area that have been trained, and they would find you as an integrator. So, that's a pretty handy dandy way to, get recognition for your work. And as I said, it's not as much training as showing that you've been trained. You can use the videos, the manuals, and the knowledge base to get the material, and then, prove it with his certification.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly thorough. I mean, theoretically, somebody can go without ever, you know, coming on campus or going to a live training and go from beginner to certified, just through the resources that we have online.
Yeah. Although we find that most people do like that hands on training, and we do that. We usually a couple of times a year we try to do regional trainings for integrators. Where people can come in and actually get hands-on training. We do quarterly training in Atlanta. We've got a class in July, September, and December. They could take a hands-on class led by a ThinManager instructor and get that hands-on training, because there's nothing beats actually doing it.
Yeah, no, and I've gotten to, luckily be part of some of the live training road shows that we've done, and I will say it's a crash course of a day trying to learn all the basics of ThinManager and some of the advanced features all in one day. But it's really cool to see kind of the the light bulb click and see people say, "Oh, I know exactly how I can use that feature or how that's going to work in my facility." I think it's really neat. Now, I know we have a few trainings still scheduled already for this year. You mentioned the ones next week, but I know we have one in July as well in Atlanta. And if somebody wants to, if one of our partners wants to, get one of these trainings in their facility or something, how would they go about that? Would they contact you, or is there a way, for them to go about that?
Yeah, we do offer training, regional training. For example, let's say the July class, July 24th, you have a company that wants 6 or 8 people trained, or even 4 people trained. They may not want to send 4 people to Atlanta. So what they may do is they may want us to come to their plant, and then we can offer a class for more people. Historically, what we've done is done 2 2-day classes, so that, like, Monday, Tuesday, half of the people can take the class, and they haven't stripped the floor bare. There's still people out there who can do the work. And then we do another class Wednesday, Thursday, to cover the other half. And so that way, you're not emptying out the plant floor. And then, for the price of sending 4 people to Atlanta, maybe they can train 8 people.
Yeah,
We would send you to the sales that handles the paperwork.
I
Um,
gotcha.
so, and that's historically been the case. I go where once sales says, we have a sales for training, here's the people, schedule it and go. And so, I'm a good contact, and I can tell you all about it, except for the price and how to get it scheduled. And
Right. The nitty gritty of having it
right.
scheduled in place.
But we have a
Well,
great inside sales department. They're exceptional people and they can facilitate that.
very cool. For our listeners who don't know, Paul is always on the road. He's always training people, and even when he's in the office, he's on the phone answering questions and training people. And it is very cool and a great experience to be in one of Paul's training classes. Paul, before we end this episode of The Plant, I wanted to get a story out of you for our listeners. Like I said, Paul is always on the road, and traditionally, ThinManager, dating way back, has done these road trips, city to city, to train people on the product. And with those road trips, we always try to have a little fun and see some cool sights. Paul, can you give us just a small story, something fun about the exploits that you think would be cool for our listeners to hear?
Yeah, one of the things that we would do is historically we would go out for 6 or 8 weeks in the spring and 4 to 6 weeks in the fall to hit cities and travel around. And we would rent vans, and then we wanted something a little bit more comfortable. So we bought a like 34-foot RV, wrapped it in this beautiful mural of a road. Tom Jordan designed this street sign with Thin Man on it. It was great, and we drove it around the country at least 3 times. We put 60,000 miles on that RV, which is unusual. Most people put 12,000 miles on it. And we had a lot of fun on the road. Like the Redwoods is a great place, the deserts out west. But the most memorable one is we're going from New Jersey to Boston. We had done a show in New Jersey and we're heading to Boston. And there is a really nice freeway, the Merrill Parkway through Connecticut, that runs beside 95, and it's beautiful. It's a parkway. It's more goes through residential. You don't see streets or anything. It's just like driving through the woods. It is a beautiful road, and so we've taken it half a dozen times in vans. And so we told everybody in New Jersey, we're going to take the Merrill Parkway, go up to Boston, blah, blah, blah. Fortunately, Matt was driving and not me. And we're driving down the road and we come to a bridge that looks low and it says 9'6". And our bus is 12'6". Normal semi's 13'6", so we're shorter than a semi, but we're pretty tall. And so I go 9'6", probably about the same time Matt does. And I watched him. He looked in his left-hand mirror, saw that it was clear, moved into the center lane, slowed down, and we went underneath the bridge. I'm thinking we're losing a couple of feet of the bus and we're going to have a convertible. And we made it underneath the bus. He pulled over. We're both sweating bullets. The 9'6" was at the edge of, the white line on the right lane. Fortunately, it was high enough in the center that we had the 12'6" and we could fit out. And we go, how did that happen? Well, we missed. There was a sign that said new commercial traffic. We didn't know that to mean nothing very big. We weren't a commercial truck. We're, like a family vehicle. So we drove another mile trying to get to the first exit to get out of there. And when we get to the Connecticut line, they have a sign in, 1-inch letters that says, low bridges, you aren't allowed to be here. So that was a very frightening event that turned out well. And I am so glad that Matt was the one driving that had that quick reflexes. He checked. He didn't, wasn't going to sideswipe anybody and drive them off the road. But let me tell you, I was pale for a week after that.
Yeah, I think that's a heart attack inducing experience that could have gone a whole different way.
Yeah, we could have all gotten hurt because, all of a sudden we're stopping instead of going 45 miles an hour, and it would have been expensive putting a skylight in where we used to have roof, but it turned out well.
Oh my gosh. Well, hopefully the future road trips won't have anything like that. I think there's less RVs involved now, so that's probably a plus.
Right. But but it was
Go ahead.
it was great. There's nothing like being on the road and seeing sites, visiting America and Canada. We used to go there a lot, and just the people that we get to meet, and having the ability to show them ThinManager, and when they saw how cool it is, and like you said, their eyes light up. They go, "Oh, this is what I need," So it was a good time.
Well, that's awesome, and I think you do a great job, and thank you for all the training you do. I know you got a good staff, and everybody at ThinManager does. I mean, honestly, care that people learn the product and get it deployed properly, and I think it's great.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Todd Garman, because Todd has kind of taken over a lot of the training. He and I did a couple of system integrator uh, road shows, and he kind of took over the lead on it, which was nice because I could sit in the back and help people when they have problems, and he stood up front and led it. So he's been a big part of it. But we got a ton of people who are pitching in to help because we all believe in the product.
Absolutely. I know Todd does a great job too. I thank you so much for your time. That's all the time we have today on this episode of The Plant. Obviously, thank you, Paul, for joining us. As Paul mentioned, thinmanager.com is a great resource for all your manuals, for the knowledge base, for anything you need to know to get started, as well as links to the training and ways to get a hold of us. I'm your host, Bryan Harned. We'll talk to you next time on The Plant.